Just turning up the volume a bit, Catherine, it's very low. Okay, and then the brightness. Okay. Hello, I'm Lynne Peyton. Welcome to Success is Never Accidental, the show where we get to explore all the fundamentals of success, what it means to different people, how you develop a success mindset, and we learn about some of the strategies needed for success. Most importantly, I get to interview some highly successful people from all different walks of life and discover some of the things that they all seem to have in common. My guest today is Dr. Todd Hutcheson, an international best-selling author who's also listed in Who's Who businesses in Australia. Todd's specialty, and when I always think of Todd, I think of project management, and he has managed projects for over 250 organizations in 21 countries. He leads the Peopleistic group that includes 5 different global businesses covering management consultancy, global training and development, and video production. And Peopleistic has business partners in 14 countries and clients in 60 countries. Todd is an adjunct associate professor in engineering at Curtin University in Perth, Australia, and an associate professor in business and law at Edith Cowan University, also based in Perth, Australia. Todd Hutchison is probably one of the most committed and hardworking people I know, and his specialty is using those project management skills and focus to get the job done. So please help me welcome Dr. Professor Todd Hutcheson. And Todd,
sure.
Todd, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you've already had a very busy day. Who knew this time last week you and I were having dinner in Perth, Australia, and now I'm back home in Ireland.
Very sad to have lost you and back to Ireland, but it's always great to catch up with you, and thanks for your opportunity to speak on here.
Well, I just knew you would have so many insights to share with my audience because I was in the introduction, you heard me say you're probably one of the most committed and focused people I know. And why is focus and commitment so important to success, Todd?
I think for me, it's about trying to get that clarity on where you're wanting to go and continuously kind of transforming your vision to a physical reality. And a lot of people have goals, but they don't then put it into workable elements to actually make sure they've got tasks to follow and measures in those tasks to make sure they are progressing on the things they want. And I think that covers both personal and business life as well. A lot of people call them goals, but at the end of the day, trying to take something from that vision to something that is tangible is where you really can feel that you're achieving things and making a difference.
So tell me a little bit more about that then. How do you translate a goal into something that becomes a workable, planned program?
Excellent. My main background is project management, and I think I use all those skills because if you look at a concept of project management, it's about getting clear on what you want. And projects call them deliverables, but those deliverables can be your personal goals, your work goals, your career goals. And when you actually get clear on your vision, and where a lot of people go wrong in projects is they don't bring it down to something that's absolutely got clarity to it. Like you can have too much ambiguity. So for example, we often call it chunking. If you're too high level, and they say the devil's in the detail, it's trying to bring it down to something more where you've got enough detail to know exactly what you're after. Because a lot of people are chasing things, but they haven't got the absolute clarity what they want. Chunking, for example, if you talked about transport, you chunk down, you're talking about cars, planes, automobiles. Chunk down again, take a car, for example, chunk down, you got your station wagon, your sedan, etc. You go down to ultimately get the make and model. And I think where a lot of people are going wrong, they haven't thought through the deep level down to exactly what it is what they want. Once you know what you want, then it's actually asking and sometimes getting guidance from others on what is the actual steps to make it happen. And what project management says is you set out the exact tasks, what's the task next. So for example, if someone wanted to have an MBA, well, that's the deliverable, that's the output you're after. But that means simply, what are the steps? Well, I have to enroll, I have to turn up and complete that unit, then I'll go to the next unit. And if you're just following tasks out and looking at what could slow you down, project management calls that risks. So what are those things that could slow down, stop, or hurt you? And then suddenly, putting treatments in there to resolve those and being able to respond to issues as and when they arise. So just getting on things, so it keeps you back on the focus, because, life is busy, things get in the way, other priorities change, but project management says, get clear on what the outcome is, get clear on the steps, work out who you need to support you, which is another big thing about teamwork, of course, and then make sure you're just following the plan. And when you're following the plan, clearly life can bring other opportunities and sometimes take you different pathways. But what project management actually says, get clear on the plan. And if you have to change it, they actually call it change management. Work out what the change is, what then has to be adapted in the plan, and then you're back actually to it.
And that really helps to avoid both overwhelm and stress, which are the kind of common feedback that we get from people. I work with a lot of folks in the public sector and the not-for-profit sector, and to a large extent, they don't have too much control over what the agency vision and deliverables are. But the kind of things you're talking about can help reduce overwhelm and stress, regardless of what industry we're in, Todd, because those kind of bits about get clear what the plan is for you and your team, then break it down into manageable chunks, and then stick to the plan and try and avoid distractions, which can be very difficult in the public sector because they get all kinds of things like sickness, staff shortages, new referrals coming in, so it's a very unpredictable world. Because you don't just teach project management, you teach leadership skills as well. So what are some of the things that help people stay on track when they're trying to do their best to manage their work, yet there are so many things that are beyond their control?
Absolutely. Look, I spent a lot of time, my PhD areas in behavioural sciences. I got a doctorate in criminology just to understand more about how the brain works. But when you look at it, stress is a real or perceived loss of control. And when people don't feel like they're in control, that's when the stress goes up. For example, if you don't manage what's happening in the head, and I'll use the example of having action items. If you haven't got action items written down, what ultimately happens, they're going around in your head. So you're driving home, you're going, oh, I was supposed to ring that person, I was supposed to email that, and that is adding stress. So to get it out of your head and on paper gives you a sense of control, because then you know what's actually happening. In fact, if I give you an example of even projects, we have to have an issues register. And when you get the issues on paper and then you say, here's what we're going to do about it, you realize when you get it out of your head and on paper, a lot of things you're stressing about is actually there's fewer. And when I help companies even do issues management, they'll go, oh, is that all we have to do? But you see the stress level go way down because they've got a sense of that control. But if you keep it in your head, you often see an issue and you look at it from so many different perspectives that the person gets overwhelmed. And therefore, it's trying to actually get it out of your head on paper. And then when you're having a conversation, you go, actually, that's the same thing. That, isn't it? It's just coming from a different perspective. So firstly, I say, get it out of your head and on paper. The second one is actually look at what skills that you have to develop that's going to get you to be able to achieve things a lot easier. And maybe that includes mentoring or getting a coach. Sometimes you've got to develop your own skills, but sometimes it's easy to go and actually ask someone for help and get more clarity. But it really comes down to having a sense of control. And I even use this even for children. If I give you an example, we call them options, and you can manage up, you can manage down. But if I was managing down to children, I might say, well, do you want to go to this park, or this park? Now, in a sense, they feel like they're in control. But arguably, I've actually put the ideas of the park in their head. If I wanted to manage up in a work environment, for example, I might say, there's this issue over there, and the boss is likely to say yes. And then you get better at saying, well, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. And effectively, you're pitching your ideas and options. but no one wants any more work. So when they say and agree with you, then you go, do you want me to take care of that? And the next minute, you've actually got something that's more in your control because you got permission to do it. And I think that managing up really gives us a sense of getting the things that you want to help and make a difference in the workplace, but you can't generally get people to support it. So options is always a great idea. In fact, even looking at going into a shopping center, your grocery, you'll notice there's multiple tomato sauces, and that's because they've even worked out sales psychology. If they give you only one, you might go and look at other shops. If they give you too many, you get overwhelmed. And 3 seems to be the magic number. In fact, even in project management, we talk about you do the project this way or this way or this way. And then I realized so many things around this concept of options. But what it does is gives us a sense of control by putting ideas on the table, and it gives the other party a sense of control in selecting it. And together, it's all about getting a sense of control, because I certainly find that the stress goes way down when we do that. But I also have found that there's 3 brain hacks. And when I work around the world, and I've had the luck of working in 21 countries, the people that I've found have been successful in taking their own vision to reality, they tend to use these 3 brain hacks. So if I may quickly mention them, because I kind of live by them, and I find that's what gives me that resilience. And the first one is actually to get rid of the negative thinking in your head. And the actual technique is you say replace and reject and replace. So as soon as you start saying something negative, like I'm fat, you go reject. And then you have to say something that you want to correct it to. Now, you have to say something that the little voice isn't going to come back. So if I was overweight and I said, reject, I'm getting skinnier, well, that would actually work. But if I'm said I'm skinny, the voice might come back at me again. So, and say, no, you're not. Look at yourself in the mirror. So you've got to say something that gets rid of the voice. So I'd say, reject, I'm getting skinnier every day. And then the voice goes, oh, are you? Oh, well done. Now, once you start getting rid of and getting good at this reject and replace technique, the second one is actually affirmations. We're probably where how good affirmations are to actually start conditioning the brain. And for example, if I had some concerns about not being able to present properly, then I'd have an affirmation around that. Something like, every day in perfect ways, I'm getting more confident and more speaking more clearly. And that makes me feel more powerful to stand in front of people. And once you have these affirmations and you keep going over it, that's actually conditioning the brain. But the last one that often people use is the visualization technique, where you get very clear on what you want. And I remember Michael Phelps talked about, after he won 8 gold medals at the Olympics, talked about that every day he would visualize he was an 8 gold medal Olympian. And being a world champion myself, I can tell you, when you're visualizing and you're believing that that's true, you start wiring your brain to fake it till you make it concept. You start believing that's who you are, and you start acting like that, because we talk about our thinking impacts our behaviors and actions that give us our results. So if something's not working for you, go back to your thinking. And I just found those 3 brain hacks, a lot of people are actually using them without even knowing what they are. But they're very simple. They're something you can use every day. And the roller coaster of life, we're all in it. But as soon as I start going down, I go, what's that about? And I'm going to have an affirmation for family, for work, for a whole pile of things. And I start using that affirmation to get myself up. As soon as you're down, get yourself up. And really just getting rid of that negative thinking.
And sometimes people scoff at things like affirmations and whatnot because it sounds a wee bit silly and repetitive. But you and I both know the power of affirmations, the power of managing that negative voice in your head. And I always tell people there's so many books written about this stuff because you're not the only one. It's such a common issue that people write so many books about it. And one of the ways that we can tackle that negative voice is by asking great questions. So one of my favorite ones is, what if? Well, what if it's not that bad? What if it's just busy? What if there was a better way? As you were saying earlier, what are your options? And actually asking yourself great questions starts to get that clarity that you were talking about. But you've done so many things in your life, Todd, and been incredibly successful in all of them. But things don't always go according to plan. So what do you do when you hit a bump in the road?
Well, one of the techniques I did develop was to deal with frustration. And I think we all get frustrated.
I
And
think frustration, next to stress and overwhelm, frustration is probably the single most overused word in the history of the universe. So tell us how you cope with frustration.
Well, I found I was actually in a kind of defence role, and I couldn't get anything done because I was a junior officer in the headquarters. So everyone had more rank from me, and I was very frustrated. I was almost going, God, why have you put me in here? When am I supposed to learn? And I think that's one of the things we've got to do is go in a bad scenario. What is it that I'm here to learn? And for me, I felt it was like a bit more about influence and persuasion. But what I found that there's three things. I called it the CIA. So you've got your sense of control. Now, what can you control? You control how you dress, how you turn up, how you speak. They're all about you. But as soon as I try and control others, it's not going to work, and I'm going to get very frustrated. So once you're actually feeling like you're frustrated, you've got to switch your energy to one of the other two because you're doing the wrong one. So for example, if I'm trying to control you, I can't. I only control myself, but I can influence you. So once I then shift my energy to influence, that's where I'm actually trying to work out, well, how do I better get you on the idea that would actually support what we're trying to do? But sometimes it's not even influence because it's not other people. It's actually something you have to accept. And that's why I call it the CIA, because if I give you an example, there was a lady who was had a child that was born blind, and she said she started blaming herself and blaming her husband. She was trying to control the situation. Then she turned her energy to the doctors and said, you fix it. And then she realized she's talking about it for a child, and so influence obviously wasn't working. And then she said, it was only, Todd, when I actually decided that, knowing I was the mother and I was the only one that was going to love that child as much as that, and I accepted the fact that the child was blind, I moved automatically to say, how do I create the best life for them? And it's not about giving up. Acceptance is about recognizing upfront that we've got barriers and we've got to go straight to a workaround. And I like to use the analogy, you've got like an ant. If you've got an ant walking across and you put something in front of an ant, they actually don't climb, even though they can. They automatically go around it. And the reason why, they're always seeking least resistance. And from a human being, we're trying to use least energy. But if you put a ring around an ant, it's quite interesting. It hits that ring, it walks around the ring because it leaves a scent to know where it's been, and then it climbs. And I always thought, that's right. Acceptance is about not giving up. Acceptance is about automatically switching to a workaround. So whether you need to control something, influence it, or acceptance, if you're getting frustration, you're just using the wrong one. Flip over to the one that's going to work for you. And when my wife first met me, she said, Todd, are you one of these people that holds things in and then explodes? And I said, what do you mean? She goes, you're running these businesses, you're global, you're doing this. Why aren't you exploding? And I said, CIA, because as soon as I feel frustration, I realize I'm doing the wrong one and I switch over.
And that's interesting because frustration usually means that you're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to get a different result. And what you're saying there is probably we're overdoing the control part of CIA, and we need to start thinking about influencing, and where we can't influence, then accept. Now, you and I both know we can only influence people in their model of the world. And you're really into behavioral science. And I know you use DISC and other personality profiling tools. Why is that so important that we understand the person we're trying to influence, or indeed in a team, that we have the right mix of people in our team and we know how to get the best from each of them?
Well, behavioral profile has got to a point now that you can actually see what your key natural style is. That's what you're born with, and what you're actually doing, which we call your adaptive style, or your need to adjust. And this actually then shows us what's going wrong in our lives. And this is what I use to really turn my life around into what neuroscience will call flow, where you're doing things easier, faster, more effective. And that's effectively when you've got your natural talents, you've developed those, and therefore they're aligned to what you're actually doing in the workplace. But behavioral sciences says that we're born to be in teams because you can have different behavioral blends, but the person who's opposite you adds the most value to you. They can annoy the crap out of you too, the easiest, but they are the ones that bring the most value. For example, you've heard that opposites attract. And if you think about this just as an example, one of the styles, you just mentioned disc, but one of the styles is the driver, the dominant. And if you overdo anything, it becomes a weakness, by the way, because then you become arrogant, dominate, bullying type of thing. But if you were a D and you got home, you said, oh, I feel like going to Mac and Spack. This happened today. And you've got a partner that's a D, they might say to you, no, go back now and get them. And it's like putting fuel on fire. So you actually need someone that's like that to can't be calmed down, and someone that's the reverse to actually being able to be assisted to get up. And so every project team I run, every employee I have, and everything I do with clients, we actually look at behavioral profiling, because we understand that we're born to be in teams. And if you can work out who works best in your team, that can actually accelerate your success. Because if I give an example, if a person's working in an environment, they're very technical, they might be very good at process improvement and all those things in the workplace. So they think, you know what, I might leave this organization and become a consultant. But those people are generally very high introverts, which means they don't really like going out, meeting people and getting to work. So suddenly they leave their employment, they go out there as a single consultant, and they're not getting success. What they actually need is someone that can go out and find the work and bring the work to them, which is the opposites of that, which we call the high I or influencer. And they can't necessarily do the work. So they need them to do the work. So you'll realize opposites attract both in your personal life, but also in business. And I've found, as part of my PhD, analyzing people in management teams and looking at even, say, a board, where there's a shortfall in the behavior style, there's usually a shortfall in what the business is trying to achieve.
And that's true everywhere in life, isn't it, Todd? But let me ask you this, how can we use behavioral profiling and that understanding of the different personality types? Because what you said, it's inherent, we're wired a certain way, and then we have to work on developing the other skills, whatever. But how can we use that sort of level of understanding to help with the person who performance isn't good enough, if you like, within the team?
Excellent. Well, I end up doing this a lot because I get called in because someone's not performing. And if I give you an example, is one I'm dealing with right now, that they're in a group of companies and the person's not succeeding in sales. So they're moving them over to the other company, but they're putting them in a sales role. And then they're moving over to the other company and they're wondering why this person's not working. I actually use behavior profile to say what role should they be in. And as it works out, they're not good at sales. They'll never be good at sales. It's actually hard work for them, because when you go into something that's your natural style, you're using least energy. When you go and do the opposite, you're actually using most energy. It's like you can either swim down with the current or you can fight the current going up. So all I did is I said, actually, this person is not ideally suited for sales. Go and put him in your warehouse. Now, once that person that had them put him in their warehouse, they rang me up and said, oh my heavens, this person's done this and they've done that and they've done that. So I find, if we don't know what's actually happening with the person, this is the insight, because again, what are they doing their natural style compared to what are they doing? And that will even indicate what types of roles they're going to be good at, who they best work with, where their strengths are going to come out. But a lot of people are not performing. They're just in the wrong roles or playing it the wrong way. And behavior profile gives us insight to say, how should they be playing? What roles are they suited at? And where you should be putting them. And that's why I think as leaders, we've got to take responsibility to make sure we're putting people in the right roles. And I find a lot of the clients I work with, they say, can you do a behavior profile as part of that recruitment process? Because they're trying to put them into a role that may not suit them. And so when they get them in, it's kind of waste of money, waste of training, and they never get the result. And then you grab that person and go, actually, this person is well suited to your business, but they should be over there. And if you can predict that by doing profiles and get that early up front. But I will say, Lynne, the complexity of a human being, behavioral is only one element. Sure. And I always talk about that, nature and nurture. So when you look at nature, I have found behavior profiling is one element of nature, but again, you adapt and do something different with your behavior. So you kind of have to align that. Then you've got your communication style, which science often refers to as the human representative system, which, some people are very good at visual, some people are more auditory, and some people are more feelings people. So that can impact on how we meet and communicate. So if you click with someone, you've got the same style. But then if you go over to the
And
actual...
you know what, sorry, I'm interrupting you because that is so undervalued, but it's like speaking a different language. And the example I always give is, like, if I go to the chiropractor and I want him to feel where my back is sore because I'm kinesthetic and he's visual and he just wants to show me on the x-ray, but I need him to see to feel my pain, you know, and it's like talking two different languages. And interesting, you know, my husband does a lot of work in medical negligence field, and many of the situations where people complain, it's not actually maybe negligence, but where they make a complaint, it's usually because of a breakdown in communication. You know, and
absolutely.
people just
It's
don't.
such a big area that...
Good. And we're not going to go into any more today on communication, because what I'm thinking, this has been so fabulous, Todd. I want you to come back another day so we can maybe dive deeper into the communication side of things, because it's the one critical element of leadership. If we aren't effective in our communication skills as leaders, then it doesn't matter how good we are at all the technical bits or all of the management pieces. We need to be effective communicators. So come back and talk to me about that another day. One final question. If there was one piece of advice, because you and we've moved on a bit now, but if there was one piece of advice you would give your younger self, what would it be?
Focus on clarity and look at how you best leverage. Look at what you've done, what skills you brought, what your experiences are, because I find the path to success is when you're leveraging everything you've done, but you have to get clear on where that path's going. So clarity and leverage, stay with those two words. Yeah,
because otherwise we waste so much time. And I think the one I would say is don't be so hard on yourself, because we're all so hard on ourselves. Todd, amazing. Thank you so much. I know you've had a really busy day, so thank you for making time to share so much wisdom and insight with our audience today. Thank you so much, my friend, and I will see you next year.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I'll just stop the recording. I can figure out how to do it.
I don't think I did very well there, Lynne.
Yeah. So Todd, how can people follow you or get in touch with you or find your books?
Excellent. Well, I'm listed as Dr. Todd Hutchison on LinkedIn. If you find me on LinkedIn, I'll even give them some free videos to watch, and even some stuff on those brain hacks. Oh,
that's absolutely amazing. Thank you for that. Brilliant. Great, Todd. So listen, I'll let you go because you probably haven't even had dinner, and then Catherine will pull this all together for us.
Awesome. You're a champion.
Love you.
See ya. Take care. Love you lots. Bye.
Well, that was just such an amazing interview, and I hope I can do justice to summarizing all the many insights and wisdom that Todd shared with us today. But first of all, he said, the secret to success is to get clarity on what you want and where you want to go. Then you have to transform your vision into reality by setting goals, and not just setting goals, but breaking those goals down into tasks and following the plan. Then you have to identify the likely challenges that you might encounter along the way and figure out how to address them. And if you do have to change the plan, then you do it using a change management approach. But essentially what he was saying is use project management approaches in both your professional and your personal life to help you get focused and to stay on track. And he gave us so many insights and practical strategies as well. We talked about managing feelings of stress and overwhelm, which are so common in today's busy world. And Todd clarified that stress comes about when there is either real or perceived loss of control. So taking control back is one of the ways that we address stress and overwhelm. And his suggestions for doing that are not unfamiliar to you guys, because we've talked about these before, but get everything you need to do down on paper so you can see it, you can prioritize it, and you can chunk it. Because seeing it helps you get clarity about what needs to be done first, and then what you can leave for tomorrow or another day. So get it all down in paper first. Then the second thing he said is identify your options. Either do that on your own or with a colleague or a supervisor or a coach or a mentor, because it's good for other people to ask us questions to help us identify what our options are. And plant the seeds sometimes of things that we may not have thought about. And then he said, check in if you have the necessary skills needed to get everything done, or do you need to find someone to help you? And, you know, that's another really important thing. When we're stuck, we need to ask for help. So feelings of stress can be reduced when we regain control. The other thing he talked about was frustration, which again is another really common negative emotion that we experience. And he gave us a model to manage frustration. And I love that CIA principle. Control, be clear, C is for control. Be clear what you can control and what you can't control, and don't keep fighting against the bits that you have no control over. So if you can't control it, the I stands for influence. So ask better questions. Who do I need to influence? How can I influence? And then the third stage is acceptance. And when we reach acceptance, we can ask better questions like, how can I manage this better? How can I improve the situation? What else can I do? And finally, teamwork. Todd said, we are born to be in teams. Collaboration with others is essential. And we can get the best out of everybody on the team if we understand their natural style and ensure individuals are in roles in which they can succeed because the role is aligned to their behavioural profile and to their skill set. And it reminds me of Jim Collins, who always says, you just don't need the right people on the bus, you need the right people in the right seats on the bus. But ultimately, Todd said, we want to be in flow ourselves, and we need to ensure as leaders that we enhance the flow within our teams. As leaders, we have responsibility to ensure our staff are enabled to give of their best. So an amazing, amazing podcast. Connect with Dr. Todd Hutcheson on LinkedIn to access some of his amazing tools and get advice on how to enhance your project management, leadership, and communication skills. If you love this podcast, give me a review on Spotify. And for more information on the Core Leadership Development Programme, email me at lynne@lynnepeyton.com. Until next time on Success is Never Accidental, keep working on your formula for success.